Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Remembering John Pierrakos. We're very lucky and fortunate today to have with us Dr. Karyne Wilner. Now, Karyne's been in the field for many years, 40 plus years as a clinical psychologist, and then working very closely with John in the early years to formulate not only the work globally, but participating in that in various administrative and senior roles. One of the critical ones for me was for being the global head of curriculum, which made sure that this work could be structured and taken out. Of course, Karyne's taught in many of the institutes globally, as well as outside of our own little field. So Karyne, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, hey, it's great to be doing this. I'm really honored to be invited.
Yes, for sure. Look, there's so many of us that are so keen to get your views, as well as your peers who spent so much time with John in those early days. And it helps us to remember the man coming into his 100th year of being, had he been here with us.
Wow.
So that's our intention. So tell me, Karyne, how did you come across John? How did you come into this work all those years ago? What was happening?
I feel very lucky about it. I was studying at the University of Pennsylvania, nonverbal communications, and a friend of mine who had studied bioenergetics with Lowen and Pierrakos said, you have to meet John Pierrakos because he can look at somebody's body and tell their life history. And I was fascinated by this. So it turned out that John was going to be in Philadelphia at a conference. This was in 1983 at the Sheraton Hotel. So I took myself to this conference, and he was in it was a big room filled with maybe 200-300 people. And he was doing something we call body readings. And he was standing on a little stage, and people in the audience were raising their hands because they all wanted to have their bodies read. Yeah. And he would call on somebody. He never saw these people before, ever in his life. They came up and they undressed and had on bathing suits or something, or shorts. And he took a look at them and he said, well, this is what happened with here, and this is what happened here, and here's your future. And people were like amazed. And I was like, stunned that anyone could see so much in a person's body. Now, I'd never met John. This is the first time I'd ever seen him. At the end of this thing, I went up to him, how people go up to the speaker at the end, and I waited to talk to him. And when it was my turn, I said, I would like to study with you. Those were my exact words. I wanted to learn from him so badly. So he said, send me your autobiography, send it to my office in New York. And I did that. And then 3 weeks later, his secretary called and made an appointment for me to come to New York and meet him. And that was the beginning of our work together. So that's the very exciting way that I met John.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And obviously with all this excitement, and I can feel the energy of you going back in that time. And in fact, I was picturing the room and him on this little stage as you were speaking about it. That vibe, when it came to you dealing with him personally, what really stands out for you, or what's memorable for you about your personal interaction with John after that initial introduction?
I don't know if it's hard for me to say it as personal, although we did have a personal, he was my teacher, my mentor, my friend. For a while at the beginning, he was my therapist. So I certainly had a personal relationship, but what stands out for me is just how he was with me and with everybody else across the board. This was a true person. He walked his talk. When he talked about opening the heart and seeing the positive in a person, he did that. There was never a time I was with him that I didn't feel loved. And I just can't tell you what that was like. I mean, to feel so respected by someone, even if we had a disagreement, you know, I worked with him for 20 years very closely. And I never didn't feel his love for me. It just reached out and embraced me. But I saw that with other people too. So, and then his authenticity, he was straight on with you. And he valued me, and that taught me to value myself. It was incredible. Just an incredible person. He deserves to be held in high regard because he was unique. So,
Well, you spent a lot of time traveling the world with him, didn't you, at one stage as the institutes were growing and the demand and recognition of the work was being acknowledged. What were your experiences around that? I mean, that must have been amazing to be in so many different places together.
well, it was like one long education. He was invited to Brazil and he asked me to be the director under him of the training in Brazil. So for 12 years, we traveled back and forth to Brazil. Also, we came to Australia. You were in that class, and that was wonderful. Well, I mean, there wasn't any place I didn't go with him, to be honest. Like Mexico, France, Canada, I had amazing experiences. So we weren't always there at the same time, but we were there part of, like if I went at the beginning of the week, he would come at the end of the week. So there was always overlap. And sometimes we were on the same flights. What was it like? It was like I could ask him any question. He was never too bothered. The reason I'm teaching body reading the way I am right now is because I could sit on planes with him and I could say, what does this or that mean? And he would tell me. So I was getting I just lost your picture. I don't know if
I'm back. Excuse me.
Okay, you're back. I'm glad. I was getting this kind of private education that now I feel, it's for me to share with other people. He's not around, so I can bring what I got from him to other people. But otherwise, I mean, he was a very serious person. He took his work very seriously, our work seriously. There were always, when we traveled, a lot of meetings with the directors and to make sure that everybody was on board with everything. So it was always down to business. He loved music, so and he loved good food. So when we traveled, there were always great dinners with fresh ingredients. And, he introduced me to, like, I didn't know that kind of stuff. Like when we were in Berlin together, it was like taking me to restaurants I can't even imagine eating at, or Italy, but with the freshest, delicious ingredients. And he loved fish and he loved sushi. And it was just, I mean, it was very special. What else can I tell you about him? He loved music, so it just and he was serious, but he was fun and he was sweet. He always had an eye for the women, I think.
I was going to ask you about that. He seemed very charming at times.
He missed Eva like mad. Whenever we traveled at night, if we were together, I mean, he went to his own space, but he lit a candle and she was always on the altar. And, he would meditate. She never lost her special place in his life. And a lot of people feel like once he passed on that they're together even now. But at the same time, he didnn like being lonely, and he was lonely to some degree. So if there was a particular person that was special to him, then that was very nice, and I think that was a good thing for him. And I don't know what else
Well,
I can say. It's just that he was a fine person.
no, no. And it's wonderful to hear that, I mean, it can be very lonely with all of the complications of creating this work and so many multi-dimensional relationships that he had, that he could also allow himself that human need, and to not isolate himself so much. It's very encouraging for me to hear that, because of
Right.
course the
I mean,
times
he
we
he
saw him.
really walked what the walk, and we teach a lot in core about pleasure, bringing pleasure into our lives, and
Yeah.
he did that, and he really lived his life to the fullest, and it was beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, fortunately, unfortunately, the case was by the time we experienced John, from what I hear from many of you, he'd calmed down a lot. He was quite gentle because he was a bit of a nutcracker in his youth, from what we can gather.
Well, that I don't know. He never told me about that. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, his youth was in Greece. Is that what you mean? Or
Oh,
what part?
I meant in the early stages of this work, the way he worked with people was very direct and sometimes quite piercing. And I think he developed a lot of subtlety by the time he got to us.
No, I don't. I think I wouldn't describe it like that. I think
Okay.
um, because the same, I don't think he ever, when he part of our work is to confront the mask. And some of the
Yes,
people he worked with had some pretty strong masks.
I see.
So I don't think he softened in that way. I think he always
Yes,
loved those people, but even in your class, if he felt like somebody was in their mask, he would be very direct with them. So
sure.
I don't think that he was fiercer. I think if you were untrue, or
Mhm.
if you were kept yourself in the dark, or if you didn't own your lower self or even your higher self, I think he would
Yes,
confront you. But that to
right.
me was part of what his beauty is, on authenticity. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, I met him in '83 and worked with him closely from then till he died. I was like an
Yes,
executor of the estate. I was very close to him.
yes.
But um,
I get
he
it.
was good with his clients, because if you came to him, he was going to help you, and that meant he was going to crack that artificial you.
Mm, mm. Well, and that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? Someone who can see not only the inside, but the path to get to that, and be able to lead us and everyone else into that
Right.
place of freedom. So, wow, Karen, if I may ask then, in terms of your own personal shift, you spoke about such a significant thing right in the beginning, the ability to see and respect yourself and love yourself that he demonstrated and you were able to role model. If
Mhm.
there was something then that you took from him that you felt you've given in the work, that with all the service that you've provided to this sector over the years, what would be the biggest thing that you can attribute there?
Well, the biggest thing I got from him was in terms of my own personal work with him, which I guess gets carries over into my teaching,
Yeah.
is opening my heart. I mean, my my character structure probably is oral rigid to some degree, so I was pretty armored, and
Yeah.
when I got to him, I don't think I had been divorced. I didn't have any children.
Mm.
My life was, there was that emptiness, the emptiness that the rigid can carry under. You're very success oriented, but you have this kind of dead inside.
Yes.
And my work with him was amazing, because first I got a dog, I adopted a child, I got married again. I mean, you guys, you all saw it. You
We've
saw
been
my.
following this progress. It's been amazing. And we were so lucky to meet Nicole, your daughter, which was amazing because
That's
you brought her
right.
with her
That's
down here.
right. So it took someone who was kind of dead on the inside,
Yeah.
and my work on myself, and then it carried over to my work with clients. The armor was released, and all of a sudden I kind of knew what love was, and I could love other people, and I could love, my clients and my students and God. And so, yeah, I mean, there, for me, it couldn't have been a more powerful process.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, that's what I was hoping that you would talk about, because we see that in you. I mean, and recently I'm sure you, and I loved your message back about what the Global Institute, the directors, fed back to you, because it was so touching what they wrote, and I loved how you responded to it.
Oh my God, such beautiful messages. Wow.
Very well, we love you.
Thank you. Thanks. So, and I have that to thank, both John and Cornergetics. I mean, the beautiful thing about is it didn't have to be John, it's the process. He created a process that can allow people to take this armor off and enrich in their lives. And that's so fantastic.
For sure. In all of that time, because you worked so closely with John, how did you feel he was able to communicate these messages to his peers and others in the mental health, emotional health field?
You mean outside of Cornergetics?
Outside of Cornergetics, I mean, how was the journey of this message to get across the broader communities, health communities?
I think I'm not sure he did that. Maybe that's more what the next steps for us to do, that we've attended these directors meetings. I think for him, he did it within the United States and the European body psychotherapy community. So he had colleagues, Al Pacer, somebody mentioned to me recently, all the people that studied with Reich, including himself. So, but, John was still, no matter how you look at him, he was still Greek at heart. He had this Greek masculine thing. So it was like, my way, the competitor, that the Greek warrior, so even if, the other guy was, I don't know, what's the guy named Kellerman. Let's say Kellerman has studied with Reich and came up with this thing, and John had this thing, and Lowen has this thing. It wasn't like they were agreeing, there was this fierceness, my way, so.
So there was a lot of competitiveness there as well.
I think so. So I think it's our generation, or maybe your generation, that's going to do more of that,
cross-pollination.
But even it's not really happening. Like right now, the directors are working within themselves to form a cohesive unit. Maybe the next step would be to outreach to other body psychotherapies or talk therapies, but I don't know that we're the leader on that. I mean, it may even be Hakomi or some of the other or somatic experiencing. Some of those others are maybe making more of an outreach into the world than we are. So that's something that, it's a good question, but John didn't really do that much. He didn't really even go to the American Psychiatric Association meeting, maybe once or twice since I've known him. It wasn't where his head was. And maybe because he knew he wouldn't be totally accepted.
Yes. And that's what he'd said to us one time when he was down here, how he was so excited to present to them once early on. And he's up there and they were drinking coffee, talking, walking in, walking out, going to the pharmaceuticals. He was very disappointed even all those years later, as he was telling us, and there was a big sadness in his passion not even being heard, let alone received.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's interesting that you're sharing that. I mean, I think that happens now. We're more and more accepted. Yesterday, I had a phone call with a woman who's, I don't know if she's a psychiatrist or a medical doctor in integrative medicine. She's known in the psychotherapy world. Her name's Martha Stark. And she had gone to my website, and she was fascinated that I do body psychotherapy. And she started naming people she knew who do it. And that's why I thought of El Peso, because she named him. And it's interesting because body psychotherapy isn't her world. But she, in fact, I was just talking to her because she was interested in left brain, right brain, and I am too. But, you know, so it's beginning to get, there's more of a connection now, but not as much as we would like.
Well, you know, hopefully I'm going to be able to catch up with some of John's peers from those old days that are around that had some interaction with him from those other streams of work, because I'd love to get there.
That would be fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
my intention. And certainly
Good.
Walid knows some of those in Europe, so he's assisting me to try and get hold of some of the guys there, and hopefully we'll have them also participate in this way.
Great, very good. Yeah.
Terrific. So if there was one thing you could leave us with, Karyne, anything to do with John or the work or the legacy even, is there something that stands out for you?
Well, I guess the thing that stands out for me is energy. I think that we all have to be very to our energy, so that energy is neutral, but how we think can affect it. So you can take neutral energy and make it negative or positive. So to me, just to be very aware of the energy around you and how you want to create that experience.
Wonderful. Dr. Karyne Wilner, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and sharing these wonderful memories of John and the work from such a long period of time. Hopefully we'll be back with you again a bit further down the track to elaborate a little bit more on some of these areas and some others as well.
Fantastic. And thank you for doing this. It's a beautiful thing you're doing. And it's wonderful that we'll have this history to grow from and look back upon. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful pleasure and experience for me and continues to be. So yes, by all means, we'll all participate moving forward.
Great.
Thanks so much, Karyne. Bye-bye.
Bye.